Hi, I'm David. So for this problem, we're given an equation, x squared plus 8x plus y squared plus 2y plus 8 is equal to 0. And they want us to find the center and radius, sketch it on a coordinate plane, and then use our graphing utility to check our answer. So let's recall that the standard form for graphing a circle is x minus h squared plus y minus k squared equals r squared, with h and k representing the coordinates for the center of the circle, with h being the x-coordinate of the center and k being the y-coordinate of the center. Meanwhile, r is the radius of the circle. So first, before we can do anything, let's rearrange this to meet this format. Right? So in order to do this, we need to move everything that's not the y or the x's to the other side, and also complete the square for both the x and the y. So let's start by completing the square for the x's. So to complete the square, remember what we need to do is to take the middle term, the b term, which here it's 8, divide it by 2, and then square that final result and add it to the end. So in this case, it would be the b being 8. So 8 divided by 2 squared. And we know that 8 divided by 2 is 4, and 4 squared is going to be 16. Meanwhile, we have to do the same thing for the y's. So y squared is still y squared, 2y is still 2y. But now we have to look at the 2, which is the middle term, the coefficient for the middle term. We look at the 2, we divide it in half, just like here, and then square that. Right? And then meanwhile, I'll drop the 8 and the 0. And we'll deal with this later. So now we can start simplifying a bit. This we know is going to be 8 over 2, which is 4 squared is 16. If we add 16 to this side, we have to add it to this side too to balance everything out, right? Because 8 over 2 is 4, 4 squared is 16. We added 16 on this side, so we have to add it again on this side. Same goes for here. We added 2 over 2 squared, which is 2 over 2 is 1. 1 squared is just 1. So because of that, we have to add a 1 to this side to balance out both sides of this equation. Now that we get here, we can now condense this and finish the last part of completing the square. So this is going to be x, because we just dropped this first term down. And then this is going to be 8 divided by 2, which is 4. Meanwhile, for the y's, we do the same thing. Drop the y down. And now we just add 2 over 2, which is 1 squared. Right? 2 over 2 is 1. 8 over 2 is 4. And now we can always double check our work by going backwards by foiling, right? If we foiled this, it would be x times x, that's x squared. X times 4, that's 4x, plus x times 4. So it's 4x plus 4x, that gives us 8x. And then meanwhile, 4 times 4, that's 16, which gets us here. Meanwhile, do the same thing here. Y squared is y squared. Y times 1, which is y, plus y times 1, that's just another y. So y plus y is 2y. And then meanwhile here we have 1 times 1, which is 1 squared, which is still 1, which is what we have here, right? Cool. So now we've finished the completing the square section. We can take this 8 and move it to the other side. So now we can just copy this down, and we're going to get x plus 4 squared plus y plus 1 squared is equal to, this cancels out, is equal to 0 plus 16 plus 1 minus 8. That's going to be 16 plus 1 is 17. 17 minus 8, that's 9. And of course, we want to take this and rearrange it to meet this format. So we can take the square root of 9, which is 3, and just set it as 3 squared. That way we can tell what the radius is. So the final answer here would be x plus 4 squared plus y plus 1 squared equals 3 squared, right? We have finally converted this equation into the proper format for graphing a circle. And as we can tell, we have the h's and the k's here, right? Notice, remember, that these symbols here are negative. So this is really a minus negative 4, and this is a minus negative 1, right? So in other words, h and k are actually the negative versions of the numbers that are here, right? Because we're subtracting a negative 4, which is what gets us to positive 4. We're subtracting a negative 1, which is what gets us to positive 1. So that means the center of this circle is negative 4, comma, negative 1. And meanwhile, the radius is 3, right? Cool. So now with this information, we can now graph it on this coordinate plane. So let's plot the center first. Negative 4, negative 1. So that means we're going left 4 and then down 1. So the center is right here. And then the radius is 3. That means we can go up 3. And this would be the topmost edge of the circle. And then we can go down 3. 1, 2, 3, right here. We can go left and right 3. So 1, 2, 3 goes here. And then we can go right 3. 1, 2, 3. That's approximately here, right? And then we can kind of estimate the rest of the circle to make it look something like that, right? And now remember, even though the center is used to graph the circle, the center isn't actually on the circle. So technically, when we graph it, it's going to end up looking like this. So now, let's check our work using our graphing utility. So in order to do this, we need to first isolate the y, because a lot of graphing utilities don't allow us to put it in this format. Some do, but some don't. A lot of calculators want you to isolate the y, to have the y on the left side of the equation before you can actually plug it in and graph it. So in order to isolate the y, we can take this part of the equation, subtract it to the other side, and then square root both sides and subtract by 1. So here's what I mean by that. So let's subtract this part of the equation to the other side. That then gives us parentheses y plus 1, all of that squared, is equal to, we can just simplify this, 3 squared is 9, minus this part, which is parentheses x plus 4 squared. And then in order to get rid of the square, we have to square root both sides, right? This cancels it out. So then we're left with y plus 1 is equal to plus or minus the square root of 9 minus x plus 4 squared, right? Remember, we have to do the plus or minus. We have to add the plus or minus whenever we take the square root of both sides. And now, last but not least, we just have to take this 1 and subtract it from both sides. So then the final equation is going to be y equals plus or minus the square root of 9 minus x plus 4, all of that squared, minus 1, right? So remember, this itself is not the standard form for what a circle is supposed to be like. We're only doing this so that we can plug in this equation into our graphing utility. So now we can turn our graphing utilities on, go to y equals, and under y sub 1, enter this in. We have to do it as a piecewise function and separate it into 2 different parts. So we have to have a positive version with the plus and then a negative version with this minus. So we can plug in a positive version of it, do the square root of 9 minus parentheses x plus 4 and parentheses, or all of that squared, all of that minus 1, and then repeat the same thing, but now with a negative symbol in front. So it would be negative square root of 9 minus parentheses x plus 4, and parentheses, all of that squared, all of that minus 1. And we can always adjust the window as well. And now if you click graph, you'll see this circle appear on your screen. And that is how you solve this problem.